One of the most dangerous forms of narcissism is not the kind that openly demands attention, boasts about achievements, or dominates every conversation. Those signs are often easy to recognize. People can usually identify someone who constantly seeks praise or places themselves above others. The narcissist no one talks about is much more difficult to detect because they have learned how to hide behind an image that appears admirable, trustworthy, and even spiritually mature. They understand that obvious pride pushes people away, so they develop a different strategy. They present themselves as humble, caring, selfless, and deeply concerned about the well-being of others. On the surface, they may appear to be the last person anyone would suspect of manipulation. They know how to say the right things, show kindness when people are watching, and create an image that earns admiration and respect. Because of this carefully crafted appearance, many people overlook the warning signs that would otherwise be obvious. What makes this type of narcissist so difficult to identify is their ability to use good things as a disguise. They may hide behind acts of service, generosity, leadership, or even spiritual language. They understand that people naturally trust those who appear compassionate and committed to helping others. Rather than demanding attention directly, they often position themselves as the person everyone depends on. They want to be seen as indispensable. They may constantly remind others of their sacrifices, subtly drawing attention to everything they have done without appearing boastful. Their goal is not simply to help people. Their goal is to gain influence, control perceptions, and secure a position where their actions are rarely questioned. Many hidden narcissists become experts at playing roles. They know exactly how to adjust their behavior depending on who is watching. In public settings, they may appear patient, understanding, and supportive. They know how to make people feel valued and appreciated, yet behind closed doors, a completely different side may emerge. The kindness that seems so genuine can suddenly become criticism. The support can become control. The encouragement can become manipulation. Those closest to them often experience a version of their personality that others never see. This creates tremendous confusion because when concerns are raised, people struggle to believe them. The image presented to the world is so convincing that anyone who challenges it may appear unreasonable or overly sensitive. This hidden form of narcissism often relies on subtle manipulation rather than direct aggression. Instead of openly controlling people, they influence emotions, perceptions, and decisions in ways that are difficult to detect. They may use guilt to get what they want, making others feel responsible for their happiness or well-being. They may twist conversations so that they always appear innocent while others seem at fault. They may use selective kindness, offering approval when people comply and withdrawing affection when they do not. Over time, those around them begin adjusting their behavior to avoid conflict or disappointment. Without realizing it, they become increasingly controlled by the narcissist's approval and disapproval. One reason this behavior remains hidden for so long is because the narcissist often mixes genuine positive qualities with unhealthy motives. They may actually possess talents, intelligence, generosity, or leadership ability. The problem is not always in what they do, but in why they do it. Their actions are frequently driven by a deep desire for admiration, significance, and control, rather than a sincere concern for others. Because some of their actions appear beneficial, people naturally focus on the good they can see and overlook the harmful patterns operating underneath. This creates an environment where manipulation can continue unchecked for years. The hidden narcissist also works hard to protect their image. Reputation is extremely important to them because their influence depends on how others perceive them. When someone begins noticing inconsistencies or questioning their behavior, they often respond by subtly discrediting that person. They may portray themselves as misunderstood, unfairly criticized, or victimized. They rarely want direct confrontation because confrontation can expose the truth. Instead, they prefer controlling the narrative. They want people focusing on how they appear rather than examining what they actually do. This allows them to maintain support even when their behavior is causing significant harm. Spiritually, this kind of narcissism can be especially deceptive because it often imitates qualities that God values. Humility, generosity, leadership, and service are all beautiful qualities when they come from a sincere heart. However, when those same qualities are used as tools for personal gain, they become a mask rather than an expression of character. The hidden narcissist understands that appearances can be powerful. They know that if people see enough outward goodness, they may never look deeper. Yet God is never impressed by appearances alone. While people often evaluate actions, God examines motives. While people see the public image, God sees the private reality. While people hear carefully chosen words, God knows the intentions behind them. This is why hidden narcissism can never remain concealed forever. Maintaining a false image requires constant effort. Eventually, the gap between appearance and reality becomes too large to manage. Small cracks begin appearing, patterns become visible, people start connecting experiences that once seemed isolated. Those who are confused begin gaining clarity. What was hidden gradually comes into the light. The narcissist may work hard to preserve the image they have built, but truth has a way of revealing itself over time. God's light exposes what deception tries to keep hidden, and no amount of image management can permanently prevent that from happening. For those who have encountered this kind of person, one of the greatest challenges is trusting their own perception. The contrast between the public image and private behavior often creates doubt. Victims may wonder whether they are imagining things or being unfair. They may question their judgment because so many others admire the narcissist. Yet discernment grows when people pay attention to patterns instead of appearances. Character is revealed not merely through public performance, but through consistent behavior, especially when no audience is present. What someone does when recognition is absent often reveals far more about them than what they do when everyone is watching. One of the greatest sources of comfort for those who have been hurt, manipulated, or misunderstood is the truth that God sees what people cannot see. Human beings are limited by what is visible. They form opinions based on words, appearances, reputation, and outward behavior. They can only evaluate what is presented to them. This limitation often creates situations where harmful individuals are praised, while those who have been wounded struggle to be believed. Many people have experienced the frustration of watching someone maintain a positive image despite causing pain behind closed doors. They have wondered why others seem unable to recognize what is happening. They have questioned whether the truth will ever come to light. In those moments, it is essential to remember that while people may be limited in their understanding, God is not. Nothing escapes his attention. Nothing is hidden from his sight. He sees every action, every motive, every intention, and every secret that remains invisible to everyone else. Throughout life, people often become skilled at managing appearances. They learn how to present themselves in ways that earn approval and admiration. Some become experts at saying the right things, displaying the right emotions, and creating an image that others trust. They may convince entire groups of people that they are kind, humble, and trustworthy. Yet behind that image may exist motives that are entirely different from what people perceive. Human beings often struggle to distinguish between appearance and reality because they do not have access to the heart. God, however, does not evaluate people solely by what they do in public. He looks beyond behavior and examines the deeper reasons behind every action. He sees what motivates choices, influences decisions, and drives behavior. What remains hidden from others is completely visible to him. This truth becomes especially important when dealing with narcissistic behavior. Narcissists often depend on image management. Their influence frequently comes from their ability to control how others perceive them. They know how to create impressions that make them appear trustworthy and admirable. They understand the power of reputation and work diligently to maintain it. Because of this, many victims feel trapped in a painful reality where their experiences are dismissed or ignored. They may attempt to explain what is happening only to encounter disbelief. Friends, family members, co-workers, or even entire communities may struggle to understand because they are only seeing the carefully crafted version of the narcissist. This can create feelings of loneliness, confusion, and discouragement. Yet even when no one else understands, God understands completely. He sees the conversations that happen behind closed doors. He hears the words spoken when no witnesses are present. He observes every act of manipulation, every attempt to control, and every effort to distort the truth. Many people become discouraged because they expect immediate justice. They assume that if God sees everything, exposure should happen quickly. When days turn into months and months turn into years, they begin wondering why nothing appears to be changing. They may interpret God's silence as indifference. They may assume that because circumstances remain the same, God is unaware of what is happening. Yet God's perspective is far greater than human understanding. He operates according to wisdom that extends beyond what people can see in the moment. What appears to be delay is often preparation. What seems like inactivity is frequently unseen activity. God may be arranging circumstances, revealing patterns, opening eyes, and positioning people to recognize the truth when the time is right. His work is often occurring beneath the surface long before visible results appear. One of the remarkable aspects of God's knowledge is that he sees not only actions, but also consequences. Human beings often evaluate events in isolation. They focus on what happened today or this week. God sees the entire picture. He understands how a single act of manipulation affects future relationships. He sees the emotional wounds left behind by deception. He understands the fears, insecurities, and struggles that develop because of prolonged exposure to unhealthy behavior. Every tear shed in private, every sleepless night, every moment of confusion, and every silent prayer is fully known to him. There is never a moment when suffering goes unnoticed. There is never a circumstance where pain escapes his awareness. Even when others dismiss or minimize what someone is experiencing, God understands its full weight. This knowledge should not only bring comfort, but also confidence. Confidence does not come from knowing that people believe you. Confidence comes from knowing that God knows the truth. Human validation can be encouraging, but it is not the foundation of peace. If peace depends entirely on being understood by others, disappointment will often follow. There will be situations where people misjudge motives, misunderstand experiences, or fail to recognize reality. Yet God's understanding remains perfect. His knowledge is complete. His judgment is accurate. He is never deceived by appearances and never confused by conflicting stories. He knows exactly what happened, why it happened, and who was responsible. This truth also removes the burden of trying to expose every hidden detail personally. Many victims spend enormous amounts of energy attempting to prove their experiences. They feel compelled to gather evidence, defend themselves, and convince others of the truth. While wisdom and honesty are important, there comes a point where trust in God becomes essential. No person can control what others choose to believe. No amount of explanation guarantees understanding, but God does not require perfect evidence to know the truth. He does not need witnesses to confirm what happened. He was present for every moment. He possesses complete knowledge without limitation. This means that justice ultimately rests in hands far more capable than our own. Another reason this truth is powerful is because it protects people from becoming consumed by bitterness. When individuals believe wrongdoing has gone unnoticed, resentment can begin growing in their hearts. They may become obsessed with proving themselves right or exposing someone else's deception. Yet the knowledge that God sees everything allows them to release that burden. It reminds them that they are not responsible for controlling outcomes. They are not required to carry the weight of judgment on their shoulders. God is fully capable of handling what they cannot. His understanding is perfect, his timing is precise, and his ability to reveal truth exceeds anything human effort could accomplish. The reality that God sees what people cannot see means there is never a hidden act beyond his awareness, never a secret motive beyond his understanding, and never a painful experience beyond his compassionate attention. Every truth remains visible before him, every deception stands exposed in his presence, and every situation is fully known by the one whose vision is never limited by appearances or circumstances. Manipulation cannot survive divine light because deception depends entirely on concealment. It requires confusion, distorted perceptions, hidden motives, and carefully crafted appearances in order to maintain its influence. The moment truth begins entering a situation, the power of manipulation starts weakening. This is why those who rely on controlling others often work so hard to keep people distracted, uncertain, and emotionally overwhelmed. They understand that clarity is their greatest threat. As long as people remain confused, manipulation can continue. As long as individuals doubt their own perceptions, unhealthy control can be maintained. As long as the truth remains hidden beneath layers of excuses, justifications, and distractions, the manipulator can preserve their influence. But when God shines his light into a situation, everything begins changing because divine light reveals what darkness has worked tirelessly to conceal. Throughout Scripture, light is consistently associated with truth, wisdom, understanding, and God's presence. Darkness, on the other hand, often represents deception, confusion, and hidden wrongdoing. This contrast reveals an important spiritual reality. Darkness has no independent power against light. It can only exist where light is absent. The moment light enters a room, darkness disappears. There is no struggle, no competition, and no negotiation. Darkness cannot argue with light or overpower it. It simply vanishes because light exposes what darkness was hiding. The same principle applies to manipulation. It appears powerful only while truth remains obscured. Once God begins revealing reality, The foundation upon which manipulation was built starts crumbling. Many narcissistic individuals rely heavily on creating confusion. They want people questioning their own memories, emotions, instincts, and observations. If someone notices unhealthy behavior, the manipulator often finds ways to explain it away. They may deny what happened, reinterpret events, shift blame, or create alternative narratives that leave the victim uncertain about what is real. Over time, this constant distortion can become exhausting. The victim begins doubting themselves. They start wondering if they are overreacting, misunderstanding, or being unfair. What should be obvious becomes difficult to recognize because confusion clouds discernment. This is one of the primary reasons manipulation can continue for so long. The problem is not always that people cannot see the truth. Often they have simply been conditioned to distrust what they see. When divine light enters the situation, that confusion begins lifting. God has a remarkable way of restoring clarity. He starts revealing patterns that were previously overlooked. He helps people connect experiences that once seemed unrelated. What once felt like isolated incidents suddenly forms a recognizable pattern. Contradictions become more noticeable. Excuses lose their effectiveness. The emotional fog begins clearing, and people start seeing reality with greater accuracy. This process may happen gradually, but once it begins, manipulation becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. The very tactics that once controlled others start exposing the manipulator instead. One of the most powerful aspects of divine light is that it reveals motives, not just actions. Human beings often focus on behavior because behavior is visible, yet many actions can appear positive on the surface while being driven by unhealthy intentions. A manipulative person may offer help, give gifts, provide support, or appear generous. To outside observers, these actions seem admirable. However, God sees the heart behind every action. He sees whether generosity is motivated by love or by a desire for control. He sees whether kindness is genuine or merely a strategy to gain influence. He sees whether service is an expression of humility or a method of securing admiration. Divine light penetrates beyond appearances and exposes the deeper realities that people often miss. This exposure can be uncomfortable because truth frequently challenges assumptions. There are times when individuals realize that someone they admired was not who they appeared to be. Relationships once built on trust may suddenly be viewed through a different lens. Conversations that seemed harmless may take on new meaning. Behaviors that were excused for years may finally be recognized as unhealthy. While this awakening can be painful, it is also necessary. Healing cannot occur while deception remains unrecognized. Freedom cannot be experienced while manipulation remains disguised. Divine light may initially bring discomfort, but its ultimate purpose is restoration. Another reason manipulation cannot survive divine light is because truth strengthens discernment. Discernment is the ability to recognize reality accurately rather than merely accepting appearances. It allows people to see beyond words and evaluate actions consistently over time. Manipulators often depend on emotional reactions, impulsive decisions, and surface-level impressions. Discernment disrupts this process by encouraging wisdom and careful evaluation. As God increases discernment, individuals become less vulnerable to deception. They begin paying attention to patterns rather than promises. They evaluate character rather than image. They trust consistent behavior more than persuasive words. This shift significantly reduces the manipulator's ability to control perceptions. Divine light also exposes the consequences of manipulation. Many harmful behaviors remain hidden because people focus on isolated events rather than long-term effects. A manipulator may explain away individual incidents, making each one seem insignificant. Yet when viewed collectively, the pattern becomes undeniable. The emotional exhaustion, anxiety, self-doubt, fear, and confusion experienced by victims begin revealing the true nature of the relationship. God's light helps people see not only what happened, but also the impact it produced. This broader perspective often becomes the key to recognizing deception for what it truly is. One of the greatest frustrations for manipulative individuals is that they cannot control what God reveals. They may carefully manage their reputation, influence conversations, and shape perceptions, but they cannot prevent divine truth from emerging. They may delay exposure, but they cannot eliminate it. They may convince some people for a time, but they cannot hide reality indefinitely. God has countless ways of bringing truth into the open. Sometimes he reveals it through circumstances. Sometimes he uses conversations, observations, or unexpected events. Sometimes he simply opens people's eyes to what was already happening all along. However the process unfolds, the result is the same. Truth becomes increasingly visible and manipulation loses its power. This process often begins internally before it becomes visible externally. God may first illuminate the heart of the person being manipulated. He restores confidence in their perceptions. He strengthens their understanding. He helps them recognize unhealthy patterns without being distracted by appearances. This internal clarity becomes the beginning of freedom. Once someone clearly sees the truth, manipulation no longer operates with the same effectiveness. Fear loses its grip. Confusion diminishes. Dependence weakens. The manipulator's greatest weapon, deception, starts losing its influence. Divine light continues working until what was hidden becomes visible, what was distorted becomes clear, and what was controlled through deception is ultimately brought into the liberating reality of truth. One of the most powerful ways God protects his people is through discernment. While many individuals look for dramatic signs, sudden interventions, or immediate changes in circumstances, God often begins his work by changing what a person is able to see and understand. Discernment is a spiritual gift that enables someone to recognize truth beneath appearances, identify unhealthy patterns beneath polished images, and understand what is really happening beneath the surface of a situation. It is not based on suspicion, fear, or cynicism. True discernment is rooted in wisdom, clarity, and spiritual insight. It allows a person to evaluate reality accurately rather than being influenced solely by emotions, impressions, or outward appearances. When dealing with narcissistic individuals, discernment becomes one of God's greatest tools of protection because narcissists frequently depend on appearances and perceptions to maintain influence. Many people who become entangled with narcissistic personalities are not weak, foolish, or unintelligent. In fact, many are compassionate, trusting, forgiving, and eager to see the best in others. These qualities are valuable and reflect admirable character. However, when these strengths are not balanced with discernment, they can sometimes be exploited by those who seek control. A narcissist often recognizes kindness as an opportunity. They understand how to appeal to a person's compassion, sense of responsibility, or desire to maintain peace. Because of this, many victims spend years making excuses for behavior that should have raised concern. They explain away repeated patterns, overlook warning signs, and continue extending trust despite mounting evidence that something is wrong. This is why God's gift of discernment is so important. It enables individuals to distinguish between genuine mistakes and consistent patterns of manipulation. Discernment often begins quietly. It may start with a small sense that something does not seem right. A conversation may leave a person feeling unsettled, even though they cannot immediately explain why. Certain interactions may create confusion that persists long after they have ended. A person may notice inconsistencies between words and actions. At first, these observations may appear insignificant. Many people dismiss them because they do not want to judge unfairly or create unnecessary conflict. Yet God frequently uses these moments to draw attention to issues that require closer examination. Discernment is not about rushing to conclusions. It is about paying attention when something consistently contradicts truth, integrity, or healthy behavior. One reason discernment is such an effective form of protection is because it focuses on patterns rather than isolated incidents. Narcissistic individuals are often skilled at ensuring that no single event appears serious enough to attract concern. They may alternate between kindness and criticism, support and control, affection and withdrawal. This inconsistency creates confusion because each individual event can be explained away. The victim may tell themselves that everyone has bad days or that the situation is not as serious as it feels. Discernment helps people step back and observe the larger picture. Instead of focusing on one conversation or one disagreement, they begin recognizing recurring behaviors. They notice that the same issues continue appearing in different forms. They recognize that apologies are followed by repeated offenses. They see that promises rarely result in lasting change. Over time, these patterns reveal truths that isolated incidents often conceal. God's protection through discernment also helps people separate appearance from character. Narcissists frequently invest significant effort into maintaining a favorable image. They know how to appear generous, supportive, responsible, and trustworthy. In public settings, they may demonstrate qualities that attract admiration and respect. Because of this, many people evaluate them based on appearances rather than consistent behavior. Discernment encourages a different approach. It asks not only what a person says, but also how they live. It examines whether actions consistently align with words. It evaluates character over time rather than being impressed by isolated displays of charm or competence. This deeper evaluation often reveals contradictions that would otherwise remain hidden. Another important aspect of discernment is its ability to uncover manipulation that operates beneath the surface. Many narcissists rarely use direct control. Instead, they rely on subtle tactics that are difficult to recognize immediately. They may use guilt to influence decisions. They may present themselves as victims in order to gain sympathy. They may create confusion by changing narratives or denying previous statements. They may encourage dependence while appearing helpful and supportive. These tactics are effective because they often appear reasonable in isolation. Discernment exposes the underlying purpose behind them. It helps individuals recognize when certain behaviors are being used to gain influence rather than foster genuine connection. This awareness weakens manipulation because it removes the element of surprise and confusion upon which it depends. As discernment grows, confidence often grows alongside it. One of the greatest effects of prolonged manipulation is self-doubt. Victims begin questioning their own perceptions, memories, and instincts. They wonder whether they are overreacting or imagining problems that do not actually exist. Narcissistic individuals often encourage this uncertainty because it makes control easier to maintain. God counters this confusion by restoring clarity. Through discernment, individuals begin trusting what they consistently observe rather than dismissing their concerns. They become less dependent on external validation and more confident in their ability to recognize truth. This confidence does not produce arrogance, it produces stability. Instead of constantly second-guessing themselves, they learn to evaluate situations with wisdom and balance. Discernment also protects people from becoming trapped by emotional manipulation. Narcissists frequently appeal to emotions because emotions can override logic and sound judgment. Fear, guilt, obligation, pity, and anxiety are often used to influence decisions. When someone operates primarily from emotional pressure, they become easier to control. Discernment introduces clarity into emotionally charged situations. It allows people to pause, evaluate, and consider whether their responses are being driven by truth or by pressure. This ability creates healthy boundaries and prevents manipulation from gaining unnecessary influence. God's protection through discernment extends beyond recognizing harmful individuals. It also guides people toward healthier relationships, wiser decisions, and greater emotional freedom. As discernment develops, individuals become better equipped to recognize integrity, honesty, and genuine character. They learn what healthy behavior looks like and become less likely to settle for unhealthy alternatives. This growth strengthens every area of life because discernment affects not only relationships but also choices, priorities, and personal development. The beauty of discernment is that it transforms confusion into clarity, uncertainty into wisdom, and vulnerability into strength. It equips people to see reality as it truly is, rather than as others attempt to present it. Through this gift, God protects his people from deception, exposes unhealthy patterns that might otherwise remain hidden, and provides the wisdom necessary to walk forward with confidence, understanding, and freedom grounded firmly in truth.